mythology, storytelling is perhaps the most powerful way that human beings understand their cultural bearings. Puranas have fascinating tales of the Trinity, valor of the warriors, the ethereal beauty of the goddesses, love and belonging of the nymphs, and penance of the sages. Thus, the Puranas have an enchanting story for everyone. In today's book launch, the Daivya Sutras invites you to lose yourself in this world of surreal imagination and magic. Good afternoon, everyone. We are gathered here today for the book launch of the Daivya Sutras by author Ms. Mona Verma and Sanjana Verma. Ms. Mona Verma is an alumnus of Lady Shri Ram College, New Delhi, and an award-winning author of 6 works of fiction. To name a few, A Bridge of Nowhere, God is a River, The White Shadow. She has edited various science journals, self-help books, and is a regular feature writer for online newspapers. She's also on board of various universities as an advisory expert and is much sought as visiting faculty for creative writing. She's now a member of FICCI and regular invitee to writers' meet called for by Governor of Uttarakhand at Raj Bhavan, Dehradun. A Paul Harris Fellow, she actively volunteers with Interplast Germany and Rotary International Foundation for the treatment of surgical accidents and burn victims. She's also serving as a member of the Academic Review Committee with Anushruti, a social initiative of IIT Roorkee. She is the first chair for the Outreach Committee with Kumaon in Literature Festival Planning Board. Presently, she co-owns and runs her firm Disha, which deals with corporate, organizational, and faculty-student trainings in schools and universities. To name few of ma'am awards, she has been awarded with Woman of Substance by All India Women's Conference, Hindustan Times, Women of the Year Award 2011, Reader's Choice, Outstanding Alumnus of Delhi Public School Society, and an award from National Union of Journalists India, as well as Uttarakhand Ratna 2014 award. She's also got the Pride of Uttarakhand 2019 amongst the few. I just cannot keep track, it's so many. Welcome you, ma'am. Please come on the stage, ma'am. We also have with us today Dr. Harshali Singh and Dr. Avinash Joshi. Dr. Harshali Singh is a New Delhi-based member at the Consumer District Redressal Forum. She is also an author, a poet, an academician, and a teacher trainer. She has written in several literary genres ranging from poetry to fiction, columns to essay. She is the contributing author in several anthologies and regularly writes for e-magazines. Her novel, A Window to Her Dreams, and the recently launched The Anatomy of Choice form part of a 9-book series titled Haveli series. Her poems are part of a woman-centric bilingual anthology of poems called She the Shakti. She has won the prestigious Write India Season 2, a short story contest organized by the Times of India on Chitra Banerjee Deva Karuni prompt. The Times Group has recently launched the book at the Times Literature Festival in Delhi and Bangalore amid much fanfare. She has also chaired discussion with eminent personalities in their chosen fields of world peace, meditation, infertility, and social causes in the field of writing. We welcome you, ma'am. Lastly, we have with us Dr. Avinash Chandra Joshi. Sir is an academician. He is presently NTPC Chair Professor, Center for Public Policy. Dr. Avinash Chandra Joshi is NTPC Chair Professor, Center for Public Policy, Doon University, Dehradun. Sir is an alumnus of JNU and IIT Roorkee and has taught earlier in IIT Roorkee, IIM Kashipur, IIM Sirmur, Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy, Mussoorie, UPES, Graphic Era, and Dehradun. So Sir has a huge experience of working in the academic field. We welcome you, sir. It's a 45-minute session, and since we are running a little late on the time, so 1:45 is something we'll wrap up. So considering that we've started late, so by 1:50 or latest by 2. Yes, I definitely can do that.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to have all of you, all the connoisseurs of literature and art in this festival. I am delighted to be with Mona Verma ji and Harshali Singh. In fact, I got this book, Daivya Sutras, 2 days back, and the curator of this festival, Dr. Sanjeev Chopra, gave me this book. So initially I did not understand the meaning of Daivya Sutras. All our lives since our childhood, we have been reading n number of stories. कुछ किताबें, कुछ कहानियाँ हमारी माता ने सुनाई, कुछ दादी ने सुनाई, कुछ नानी ने सुनाई. All these stories have enriched our childhood. चाहे वो महाभारत हो, रामायण हो, पुराण हो, स्मृतियां हो. मुझे नहीं मालूम कि कहाँ किन किन सोर्सेस से मुझे उन कहानियों को सुनने का मौका मिला, क्योंकि कोई ऐसा पब्लिकेशन नहीं था जहां आपको सारी चीजें एक जगह पर मिल जाएं. This was a great effort and attempt by Mona Verma, and she has collected beautifully the stories like Narottam or Vishnu, Narad evam Kamdev, चंद्रदेव, नागेश्वर. ध्रुव तारा की कहानी तो मेरे ख्याल से आप लोगों ने, काफ़ी लोगों ने सुनी होगी. शिखंडी, नल दमयंती, ये सारी कहानियां आप लोगों ने पढ़ी हैं. लेकिन इन सबको एक पुस्तक में देखने का जो सौभाग्य मुझे मिला, तो मैं वाकई में आप लोगों को धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं कि यू हैव कम आउट विद सच ए ब्यूटीफुल collection of such stories which will be an area of interest both for children as well as the adults. So this I found to be very, very interesting. And our curator is Harshali Singh. Yes. I hand over the mic to her.
Thank you.
For further proceedings.
Ji. Thank you so much. And they are very, apt words that Sir has said for Mona's beautiful, beautiful book. And I congratulate you, Mona, for writing such a book with your lovely daughter, Sanjana. And, they say that knowledge is actually the greatest purifier and liberator of the self. And I think when I read the book, I felt truly in another, what can I say, in a different universe in terms of, we, as Sir said very correctly, that we've read these stories already. We've heard them from our grandparents, from our parents. But what Mona has done in her book is that given it another tangent, given it another texture. So I think you'll all enjoy the newness of the old stories, which will be read by you, expecting a certain, story, but you will find that there are many layers to the story. And I think it will also talk about, or you will understand your evolution from, when we heard the stories when we were children. So I think it was a beautiful experience for me to read the book itself. And when I read the book, Mona, I wondered whether it was the stories, the 24 stories that came to you first, or was it the idea? What was it that inspired you to collect these stories, and why were these stories the ones that you wanted to pick up and you wanted to portray them in the way that you did?
Thank you. First of all, I must begin by thanking Avinash Joshi ji and Dr. Harshali Singh for sharing the dais and for me to learn from them in the process that I speak with all of you. And thank you, audience, for making it for this book launch. Thank you very much. And coming back to your question, Harshali, no, the stories didn't come to me first. It was only during the lockdown that, we collectively did many anthologies together. So I did about 7 anthologies and 2 ebooks. And that is where my publisher, Readomania, Dipankar Mukherjee, one day he gave me a call and he said, Mona, your pen writes mythology and history very well. Why don't you give the Puranas a try? So I told him there is no way I'm giving Puranas a try because the Puranas are all smritis. So these are the stories that you remember and then you retell them. Therefore, we do not know the origin. So I do not have the organic stories on me. There is no way I'm doing the Puranas, and also this will entail so much of research. And during lockdown, where do you think I'm going to get that kind of literature? And I certainly did not want to, resort to just online stories, what is available on Google and stuff. So he said, no, give this a try. So after plenty of prodding and pushing and lots of arguments, finally I said, let's give this a try. And then that is when the research started. When I started researching on the Puranas, the first revelation to me was that our Sanskriti, our heritage, it is ancient, but it is not obsolete. Prachin hai, lekin jarjar nahi hai. And the kind of stories that I found had me hooked. Now, from the hundreds and hundreds of stories that that the 18 Mahapuranas had, I had to cull out 24 stories. And these stories had to have a sort of a mainstay, a common thread. And that thread was that firstly, they had to be logical, nothing preposterous, that this has happened, this is what happened, and then you don't give a reason for why those things happened. Second was the mainstay was that I had to connect them to the epics that there are. So they became the backstories of whatever happened in Mahabharata and the Ramayana. So I could answer the whys that there were. So when we heard the stories of Mahabharata, Ramayana from our nannies, dadis, an elder or a sibling regaling us with those stories, whenever we asked a why, our parent would generally say, "Sawal nahi पूछते, वो भगवान थे, ऐसा ही था." Now, that why stayed within us, and that is why we were never convinced. We were appeased. We were well humored. It was a good enjoyment, but we were never convinced about those stories. Now, the heft was on me to make those stories convincing. Now, the second also, another devil that we were up against, Harshali, was that people say that, children do not read these days. It's not as if children don't read. Children read. When you see the long queues outside W.H. Smith's and Waterstones in London, a day before the new Harry Potter book is coming out, we understand that children read. Maybe when it comes to the Vedas or the Puranas, the kind of stories are not interesting enough to get them interested. So the onus was on me to give them interesting stories. So that is how the stories came out.
Wonderful. That you actually answered my second question, but thank you for that. So as I was just saying my second question, and the other thing that really stood out for me was the research, because as you very correctly said that we have the ancient texts are massive, and they're completely, it actually boggles the mind as to how you would have picked up, and thank you for answering my question. The second thing that really stood out for me was that each story that I read, though I had heard it, when I read it in your book, it was as if you were trying to, end the story with I won't call it a moral lesson, but something that if someone was so inclined, you can take away from that. So was that a conscious and a voluntary effort, or was it just because all the stories that you picked up, ended or were about telling the society about a certain way of life?
Well, Harshali, yes, that was one of the mainstays. One of the reasons that I picked up a story was that the story had to be logical and then there has to be a takeaway. People have a right to agree to disagree with the stories or with the takeaways, but I did not want to write stories that were didactic. So I wanted the readers to read the story and whatever comes to their mind, I wanted to justify it by giving them a very logical reason to why these things happened. So when you see the Chandradev in Shiva's tresses, I'm telling you the story about what happened between Chandradev, Rohini, and Rukmini, and why Shiva adorned the Chandradev in his tresses. Everybody sees the Chandradev in Shiva's next to his hair. So why something like this happened? And then, of course, there's a takeaway that even if it is Chandradev, when you resort to your ego, your belligerence, your conceit, for people to worship you, you have to be with Shiva. That is only because you resorted to something which was a negative emotion. So you couldn't have. So the takeaway over there was this. So certainly there was a reason why I chose those stories and also to make them very, very convincing. The characters had to be very relatable. So when you tell any reader that this is what God was and he was like, there is no gray areas in anyone's character. The gods and the demigods that I chose for my stories were people who had humanized emotions. There was envy, there was jealousy, there was deceit somewhere. So that the young readers are able to relate to those characters, that these were also people like us, but they had special powers, and that's why they were the gods.
Thank you so much. Avinash, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, in fact, when I was going through and reading the stories, they have been really curated very well. As you already said that you wanted a logic should be there and there should be an end where some learning is there. In fact, I was reading this Nirjal Ekadashi, the story of Bhim, and it was really very, very fascinating that how this Ekadashi, जिसको कि महीने में 2 बार व्रत रखा जाता है और केवल एक बार व्रत लेने से जो है आपको वही पुण्य मिलता है जो कि बार बार लेने से मिलता है. I want you to elaborate a bit why did you choose this story and what is the message?
So why I chose that particular story was that when young people are reading about the Kauravas and the Pandavas, they have a very the mindset is that the Pandavas were all pure and the Kauravas were all evil. That is not the truth. The Pandavas were also human. Those 5 men they also had their vices. They also had grey areas in their character. So when all the other Pandavas and Kunti and Draupadi and everyone, they were fasting on Ekadashi, it was Bhima who used to, because he couldn't stay hungry because of his build and, the wants of his body, he would steal food and eat. And it's only when he got caught that, he thought that I'm ready to keep this fast, but give me it, I can do it only once in a year. So to humanize them also. See, sir, what happens is that we need to break those barriers in the young generation's minds and tell them that there was nothing black and white about our religion. There were gray areas as well. For example, if I were to ask the audience, do you think Shakuni was evil? Everybody thinks Shakuni was evil? Both the shades, he was evil. But nobody asked why did he turn the way he was. He was not evil, he was just protecting his nephew. He was protecting his nephew, and sir, the other thing is that he was a happily married man until he saw Kunti. Kunti spurned his love, and at that time, when he was literally belted and booted out of her kingdom, that he vowed that I will destroy whosoever is dear to you. That was the reason. So people do not know that. So people always have a dark shade to Shakuni. They feel that he was a man who deserves, all belting and booting when it comes to thinking about him.
In fact,
but that
it is
is not the
also,
thing.
yeah.
So I'll just quickly pick up the question thread here. Which is your favorite story? Because all the stories, I think we all have our favorites. Whoever have read the book, but which is the one that impacted you in a very positive way, or any way that kind of left you thinking and with a strange kind of feeling that you would like to share with us?
Okay, that's very interesting question. And my favorite is Shukadev. Shukadev is a story from the Bhagavad Purana. And Shuk is a parrot. And this story is a parrot story. The parrot was Radha Rani's favorite. Everybody knows that the Bhagavad Purana is about the Leelas of Sri Krishna, his life, his youth. Yet, in the entire Bhagavad Purana, it is very interesting to note that there is no mention of Radharani. There is no mention of Radharani, and it had me really interested as to why there is no mention of Radharani in the Bhagavad Purana. How can Krishna and Radha be separated, and that too in the Bhagavad Purana, which is basically all dedicated to him, and it's a huge Purana. The reason was that Shukadev was Radharani's favorite parrot. So when it was time for Radharani to leave the temporal world and go up to the heavens because her duties on the earth were over, she wanted to leave, and Shukadev pleaded with her that please don't go. I cannot stay. I cannot live without you. To which Radharani said that your purpose on the planet is still not over. You have to stay, yet I have to go because it's time for me to go. So Shukadev stayed back. And Shukadev told the Bhagavad Purana, he started teaching the Bhagavad Purana to everyone, and then he was required to go and tell the entire Bhagavad Purana to King Parikshit. King Parikshit had just 7 days to live, and the entire Purana had to be completed there. But there was a problem. Shukadev was so much in love with his Radharani that the moment he mentions Radharani to anyone, he would be lost, completely mesmerized and immersed in his thoughts and dreams of his Radharani. And he would go quiet, he would freeze for months and months before somebody had to jolt him and tell him, please continue with your story. Now when King Parikshit had just 7 days to live, mentioning Radharani would mean that Shukadev will never be able to complete the Bhagavad Purana for him. So every time the mention of Radharani came, he halted for some time and then say Gopi or Gopika. He never calls her Radharani. That is why in the entire Bhagavad Purana there is no mention of Radha, because it is narrated by Shukadev. So this is something which had me really interested and still gives me goose flesh.
I'm sure it's one of the stories that we're going to first open to all the people who are going to pick up your book from outside. So now tell me, Mona, that has writing this book changed the way you interact in your professional life as a trainer, as a corporate trainer? Do you use storytelling in the way you interact with your, while you're taking your workshops, etc.? Do they help?
Oh, big time. And I think Sir also asked this question when we were having a casual chat outside. Yes, I think storytelling is a very compelling medium. And in these days, we have educationists sitting over here, and they understand 4 of them that I can see here, that I know. And they will understand that आजकल ज्ञान कोई नहीं चाहता. सब ज्ञानी हैं, इसीलिए वहाँ है. So we basically use lots of storytelling, and I use lots of sections from the mythology to justify what I am saying. For example, if it comes to herd mentality, so we use dohas like mund mundaye hari mile to har koi le mundaye, बार बार के मुंडते तो भेड़ भी बैकुंठ जाए. कि अगर सिर मुंडाने से ही हरी मिलते हैं, तो जो भेड़ है, the one which is sheared every year, they would be the first ones to make it to the heaven. So that is there. And the other one is again a very interesting one, which is the Rahim Doha, which is Rahiman Preeti na kijiye, jas khiran ne ki, upar se to dil mile, andar phaake teen, which is about teamwork. That खीरे की तरह ऊपर से तो it's all nice and smooth, but when you peel it and when you cut it open, there are three verticals inside it, so there are differences. And also the way Hanuman went and fetched the Sanjeevani booty for Lakshman, jab Lakshman ji मूर्छित हो गए, is a great example of the Eisenhower matrix. How do you manage your time? What was urgent and important for him was to fly and get the booty. What was important but not urgent for him to do is to identify it, because he did not know how to identify it. Now, how did he delegate the task? By giving it to Susheshan. So, seeking help. And what was not urgent and not important for him in the Eisenhower matrix was to spend his time on the Parvat and try to identify where the booty was, because until then Lakshman would have lost his life. So there are lots of principles that you'll find in these 24 stories as well, which basically adhere to what life is. And many people come and tell me, when you are talking about the Puranas or Ramayana or the Mahabharats, are these things real? If these things were not real, how do they explain life so beautifully? How do they? Why do we still have Shuktal close to Haridwar? Why do we have a Adi Vinayak temple in Tamil Nadu? Why do we have the Ram Setu? If these things were not real, these things were real, and that is why they explain life so beautifully.
Very true, but in your opinion, and after the kind of research you've done and you've undertaken for this book, as you're saying, do you think our Puranas leave space for interpretation?
Yes, certainly. There is an interpretation. Like they say, every book has a voice and no two people hear the same. So, of course, there is interpretation because the Vedas and Puranas are Shrutis and Smritis. So, there is no original text. Although I did lots of research from Kanchi, Kamkoti, Peetham and BHU from the Ashtadash Puranas and whatnot, yet there was a scope for interpretation, because sometimes interpretation is needed to make other people understand why these things happen. So, if I were to give you an example from the Mahabharata, that take Draupadi to be the human body. Take the 5 Pandavas to be the 5 senses. Take the Kauravas to be the 100 tendencies of the human mind. Now, if the senses think that they can overcome the tendencies and they give in to the tendencies and gamble with their tendencies, whether good or bad, they're bound to be defeated. But if all the tendencies are exterminated, this is what Krishna said, that whether your relatives are good or bad, they all need to be killed, because the senses have to defeat all the tendencies, whether they are good or bad, because there is always a chance for a good tendency to turn into a bad tendency. We all like chocolate ice cream, but if we overdo it, a good tendency turns into something which could be healthy turns into a bad tendency. So they have to be exterminated. Now, if we take the world to be Kurukshetra, and we take our life to be the war between the senses and the tendencies, it explains the Mahabharata, the war of Mahabharata, so beautifully. So that interpretation is always there. And also there is a sense, there is an element of fiction as well. So if we see when Malik Muhammad Jaisi wrote Padmavat, he said that this is an imagination. This is an allegorical tale between the luckless suitor Khilji and his one-sided love for the beautiful Rani of Chittor, Padmavati. And it was also told as a dastan in Persia as well. But over the period of time, because it was told so convincingly, that today it is such a sacrilege to say that Padmavat was a fiction. Everybody saw the kind of riots that took place before the movie was released. Hence, interpretation is always there, an element of fiction is always there. But with this book, I'm not trying to interpret the kind of story that was there. I turned sometimes those stories in the Mahapuranas are barely 5 to 6 lines. And now you have to turn that story into a 2,500 to 3,000 words. How do you do that? So I do not really interpret as much. I retell the story by making it more appealing by adding the dialogues, by adding to the setting, by adding to the emotions. So we are using all those verticals to make the text more appealing, but not really interpreting, because I leave the mainstay, not diluting it.
Wonderful. Avinash ji, what do you think? about the
Very well
same
said.
question
In
regarding.
fact, I just wanted to know that what were your primary sources when you wrote this book? Because you described that you did a lot of research.
Yes, sir.
So we would like to know the primary sources and how did you go about it, and how could you pick up certain things, leave certain things. So what was the process of choosing the material for your stories?
So from the Banaras Hindu University, I could fetch the Ashtash Puranas, and then there is the Kanchi Kamkoti Peetham. They also have, and these were the two main sources that I used. I not the Google, but the Google books also have certain matter. I use it there. Spoke to many people. But then there were dichotomies. In the process, there were so many dichotomies. The dichotomies were such that, because as I repeatedly am saying that there are smritis and shrutis, what happened was that the names differ. So, for example, there is a story where in Tarakshi, you've read Tarakshi, so Tarakshi is a Sanskrit for a bird. So, she has 4 children, Tarakshi has 4 children. So, Pingishka, Vibodha, Supatra, and Sumukha. Now, in various versions, sir, the major challenge was not to basically get the source material. The major challenge was that the names are different. Now, which one is the right one? So, in most of the stories, the Pingashka, one of the oldest bird, that name is different. Somewhere it is Pingashka, somewhere it's Pinaka, somewhere it is something else. I had a hard time in that particular story. It was a very interesting story where Saint Germany goes to the Vindhyas to speak to these 4 words, and I needed to have the names right. How do I get the names right? Whosoever I spoke to also gave me a different name. Now there is no voting system out there, right, who tells me that which is the right name. So my major challenge was getting the name right, and it took me almost 3 months to explore on this, and finally there were no answers. Then what I did was I understood that they use lots of symbolism and iconography, the Puranas. So every name in the Indian epic or Puranas and the Vedas, why a certain name is given to a person also is well synced with his or her character. Why, when we have the Krishna, we talk about Ashok Sundari or we talk about Huda. So all these things are explanations of the characters as well. So what is the name Pinaka or Pingashka? So I googled on those names and sought information from the dictionary, and then the word Pingashka means a yellow-eyed one, and birds have yellow eyes. That is how I understood that yes, Pingashka is the right name, and not Pinaka, because Pinaka happens to be the Shiva's celestial bow. So that is not the one. So there were many challenges as far as the dichotomies were concerned, and then symbolism came to my help.
That's a beautiful answer. In fact, let me share with you that most of the birds are named after their features.
Yes.
For example, there's a bird which name is White Eye, whose eye is white. And flycatcher, I mean, every bird
Yeah.
so is named after its features. And you could
Symbolism.
symbolism. That's a beautiful observation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was an excellent, excellent conversation. I think should we release the book now? Would you like to read a few lines of your? Yes, we'll first release the book and then.
Yeah.
Yeah. But would you like to read a few lines of your favorite story first, Mona? Just
I
maybe.
think we'll release the book and then read.
Then read?
And
Okay.
then read.
All right. Wonderful. Let's do that.
Thank you. This book would not have been possible about the love of my life, Sanjay Verma. Sanjay, I want you. And Chandeep ji, who's come all the way from Delhi for us. And ma'am, please come. Chandeep ji, please come. Yes, please. Chandeep ji, please come. 300% of a book now. Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
Now I would request.
Congratulations to you. So we'll open the house for questions now. Anybody would like to ask any questions?
Can I just take a moment, ma'am?
Sure.
We would like to facilitate you with the author's kit.
Oh, okay.
Avinash, sir, can you please give the author's kit to the two? Can I get a little round of applause for the authors? Thank you. So to Harshali, ma'am.
No, my daughter is in English. She's working there.
Harshali, ma'am, can you please facilitate, sir?
Yes, sir.
With the- Now we have around, we have less than 10 minutes for Q&A. It's open to the audience now. Any questions from the floor? Anything?
Any questions you'd like to ask? I think everybody is waiting to go out and pick up the book. We've generated enough interest. I don't think there are any questions.
If you would like to conclude.
Yeah. So I think we've had a wonderful discussion, and as I requested Mona earlier, there's no other way or better way to end a book launch, or to begin, frankly, because it's a beginning for us and for you as authors and readers, to read a small passage from her favorite story after telling us why it's her favorite.
Just give me a moment, please.
It's very difficult to select all.
Yeah, I know. So I've already spoken about Shukadev. So I will read Chandradev then. Okay. Okay, so Chandradev, the moon god, was married to Rukmani. When he was married to Rukmani, sorry, he was married to Rohini, sorry. Married to Rohini, and he had to marry her other 26 sisters as well. That is what the father's condition was. But once he married Rohini, he started mistreating the other 26 sisters because that is something he did out of pressure. So he never loved them. That is when Revati, one of the sisters, went up to her father Daksha and complained to Daksha that Chandradev mistreats us, he does not speak to us, he does not spend any time with us, and in fact even Rohini has become very belligerent and very egoistic because she has a man all to herself. So now let's see what happens. The oldest Revati complained to their father Daksha Prajapati that their husband was neglecting them and only loved Rohini. We are forlorn and feel dejected. Aren't we worthy of his affection too? Daksha grew pensive. He wondered if he landed his daughters in a distressful marriage. He took the matter into his hands and approached Chandradev. You married all of my 27 daughters and promised love and commitment towards all. But what I see is that the sisters are mired in conflict with each other. Is that fair to all? Chandradev apologized and vowed to mend his attitude towards them. But in reality, Chandradev didn't pay heed to his warning. On the contrary, his behavior with the others deteriorated. The sisters seethed with envy when they saw Chandradev shower his love on Rohini, and the pampered wife cackled with laughter. As a loving father, Daksha repeatedly warned Chandradev to treat all his wives equally, but to no good. The sisters continued to suffer, and unable to see his daughter's plight, a furious Daksha cursed him. You have turned your back on them. Rohini is no less to blame, for she has bred hostility within her own family. May your powers decline with the passing of each day. You will have to suffer from shy deterioration of body within a short period, he hissed in fury. An aghast Chandradev begged Daksha to retract his curse. Chandradev, who was so proud of his radiance, could not come to terms with his loss. Seeing him distressed, now the daughters regretted telling Daksha what they had. Their intention was not to punish Chandradev. All they wanted was his attention. They lamented the misstep, and now they feared if he simply disappeared one day along with his powers. Seeing this, Chandradev's father Atri and mother Anasuya also requested Daksha to absolve their son of the curse. But Daksha was not moved. For once a curse is uttered, no one can evoke it. Chandradev repented his conduct and vowed to mend. He pleaded and begged, and on seeing Chandradev and Rohini's agony, Daksha mellowed. I am sorry, son, Daksha said. There is nothing that I can do now. Perhaps if you pray to Shiva, he may help you. Holding on to the only ray of hope, Chandradev went to the famed holy ground, Prabhaspatan, where he established a Shivaling and prayed earnestly to Shiva. For years, Chandradev performed the hardest of penance to Mahadev at Somnath Tirtha by chanting the Mahamrutyunjay mantra. This Mahamrutyunjay mantra was composed by Rishi Markandeya in the Prabhas region. The mantra was sanctified to grant life to its bearer. After arduous atonement, Shiva was immensely pleased with Chandra's devotion. So time's up. And with this, I leave you to read what transpires between Shiva and Chandradev and Rohini and Daksha. For them, you read the book. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mona and Avinash. Leave it. Thank you so much, Mona and Avinash. And of course, a big thank you to Value of Words and the organizers and the lovely team here who have supported us and have made sure that the program goes flawlessly and is, and the biggest thank you is to the audience who sat here and listened to us, listened to Mona and Avinash and myself, and I can see the rapt attention that is there on your faces. Thank you so much for, listening to us. And I think we can end this lovely book launch on those words. Mona, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Valley of Words. Thank you, organizers, and all the young people over here who've seen to the seamless completion of the event. To Avinash Joshi ji for his solitaires of wisdom, and I would say, and Dr. Harshali Singh and Chandeep ji who've traveled all the way from Delhi just to be a part of my book launch. And that is where you do not learn love and friendship and character from any book. You learn them from people like them. You learn them from experience. And they are here. And Dr. Harshali Singh, I shall be remiss in case I don't mention, is the author of the Haveli series. Her 3 books are available outside. The latest, The Paradox of Dreams, which I've just finished, is a wonderful book. And all the women that we see, whether it is Arshi, whether we see Rukmani, or whether we see Parvati, or we see Gandhari, the strength of those women in contemporary times is very portrayed as her Nuri, as her Bhavya in those books. Please read her books. They are wonderful books to read. Thank you. Thank you very much.
you. Our next